So today we are going to be joined by another OHL broadcaster, and I've been kind of looking forward to this one because Stu Kernan and I, we used to work together up in Sudbury. We spent 4 seasons with the Sudbury Wolves. I'm now, of course, with the Barrie Colts. Stu, you're with the Peterborough Petes. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Mike. And, it's too bad the Pete's only get to see Barry a couple of times a year because it's always fun to see you and your accomplice there on the broadcast side of it.
Well, it's kind of fitting, I guess. We're saving the best for last because it's the very last game of the season for the Barrie Colts. So we'll take what we can get, eh?
That's right. Yeah, it's been fun. And I know the Pete's, they were hoping it was going to be a meaningful game, but obviously it didn't work out that way.
And it's been quite the journey for Peterborough over these last 12 months. A year ago, this team going into the playoffs is the 4th seed. There was some questions about how this team would come playoff time, but man, did they ever go on a run, end up winning the OHL championship and heading to Memorial Cup?
Yeah, about a year ago, obviously the Pete's were getting ready for the playoffs, and they secured, as you mentioned, the 4th spot and home ice advantage in the first round. But yeah, you're right. There were a lot of questions heading into the playoffs for the hockey club. They made a lot of deals at the trade deadline, some before the trade deadline, to beef up the roster. And it was the general manager, Mike Oak, saying from day one that they were going to go for it and they were going to do whatever it took to get the team to the next level. And so the changes were made. And while it was a little bit of a bumpy road after the trade deadline, I always tell people I look about 2 weeks before the end of the regular season last year, and you saw things kind of come together. And, a lot of go-to guys from other teams all on one roster. And of course, it happens quite a bit in the Ontario Hockey League. It takes a little bit of adjustment, takes a little bit of time for those guys to figure out their roles and what they're going to be heading into the playoffs. And obviously things worked out right from that first round on. And it was a great run, no question about it.
And it must have been a great experience as a broadcaster to go off to the Memorial Cup. I know that's your second trip there as a broadcaster since the Sudbury Wolves days, so that must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, you know what? It was, I was there in 2018 with the Hamilton Bulldogs. I spent 3 years in Hamilton. And it's funny, it was a little bit of it was a different kind of makeup of team and kind of a different, way that the team got there. Hamilton was first in the East Conference that year. And of course, as we mentioned, the Petes last year were 4th. So it was a little bit of a different makeup. So the run was a little different for each team. But the playoffs were, it was wild. It was a lot of fun. It was great to see these guys kind of come together. And each series, there was something in each series that made it kind of special, starting off with that sweep over our former team, the Sudbury Wolves, and then going on to beat Ottawa, who had such an incredible season last year and was the consensus pick probably to come out of the East. And it was great to see the Petes to be able to knock them off in 6. And then a great 7-game Eastern Conference final with the North Bay Battalion. The Petes winning a game. I'm here at the Memorial Center, and it was Game 6. The Petes had to win to send it back to North Bay for Game 7, and they did it. Avery Hayes scoring in overtime, and then the Petes pulling it out in Game 7 in North Bay. And then, of course, going up against the London Knights. Never an easy task. And the Petes won that series in 6, winning the final game here at the Memorial Center in Peterborough. So it was good for the fans, good for the organization, and really happy for the city of Peterborough. It had been 17 years since they won an OHL championship. So it was great to see it happen again.
And it seems like there's been a bit of a culture shift when it comes to the Peterborough Petes organization. You've got Mike Oak as the GM and then Rob Wilson, head coach. And it just seems as though this Peterborough team is just really different from Peterborough teams we've seen previously.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Mike has done a great job as GM. It's taken some time to build this team. You go back to the pandemic year of 2020, the Petes had put together a pretty good hockey club and were in a position to make a run for the championship that year. Rob Wilson, that was his second year as the head coach of the hockey club. And then, of course, everything went south with the COVID. And then it was kind of a rebuild when the league did come back. And the Petes finished 8th that year when they did come back and got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. And then, went on to the run that they did last year. So but it's been a good makeup of head coach Rob Wilson and GM Mike Oak. They seem to work well together. And, we're waiting to find out. We're pretty sure that Rob Wilson's going to be coming back. His contract is up at the end of the season, but all indications are that he'll be back behind the bench next season.
Well, he's been doing a great job behind the bench because this season coming in, I think a lot of people were expecting the Petes to, not have such a strong season, but that start to this year, I think they took a lot of people by surprise, and I think it comes down to the coaching style, really.
Yeah, I think you're right, 100% correct. Because there wasn't much expected from the hockey club this year after you lost so much talent as they did last year. Brennan Othman, Tucker Robertson, J.R. Avon, and you go down the list as key players, Chase Stillman as well. Those were key players that went on to win the championship for the Petes last year, but have since moved on to their pro careers. So you take a good chunk of your scoring out of the lineup, and and that's kind of the way junior hockey goes. There's the ups and downs of winning a championship and then getting ready to do it again a couple of years down the road. But the Petes came out strong with the guys they had coming back. They still had Owen Beck, Montreal Canadiens prospect. They still had Jacques Dubois, Sam Maillet, and some key players that really propelled this team to the start of the season. The Petes were still in first place in December. And then things, of course, when the trade deadline hit, I don't want to call it a sell-off, but when the trades began, obviously the team switched from still what was a veteran hockey club to a very, very young hockey club. Some say, no question, the youngest in the OHL, and some say the youngest in the Canadian Hockey League. And they went on to obviously have some tough times in the second half of the season, missed the playoffs, but the future looks bright with some of this young talent that's in the lineup and will be in the lineup in the next couple of years.
And Oak, probably one of the busiest general managers there at the OHL trade deadline, trading away those key pieces, as you mentioned, but bringing in some really good young talent, a lot of first round picks from the OHL draft.
Yeah, you know what? I think all along that was the mindset of the management of the hockey club, that they were going to recoup what they lost last year. The Petes traded away a lot of assets to get what they got last year, and it worked out. So now you had to kind of recoup some of those losses. And even though the team did have such a great start and was still in first place in December, I still think the mindset was to kind of rebuild, retool, and get ready for a couple of years down the road. And I think Mike did a great job at the trade deadline. Petes have 4 first-round picks from the 2023 OHL priority selection, 6 16-year-olds overall. And we're going to pick up, obviously, the Petes will pick up a couple of more key players in this year's draft. The Petes are going to get at least a top 4 pick, depending on what happens with the OHL lottery.
Yeah, and that lottery taking place on Wednesday, so I'm sure Pete's fans will be keeping a close watch on that. But speaking of the Pete's faithful, they've been coming out in droves this season, even just despite the team trailing off. Like you mentioned, they had that first place in December, and then now falling out of the playoff spot. But still, the fans, they've been coming out, and they've been huge for this team.
Yeah, the fans have been great. There are those that were a little upset when all the trades were made because, as we mentioned, the team was in first place at the time when things started to go towards trade instead of keep and try to maybe add. Some people wanted the Petes to do for the second half of the season. But, the fans have been great. I forget it's 16 straight or 16 sellouts so far this year. The fans have stuck around. They've enjoyed the young talent because there is so much young talent on this team. Carson Cameron is the Pete's #1 pick from last year, a defenseman. He's going to be great going forward. Caden Taylor, they picked up from Sudbury. He's going to be an impact player in this league. I think he's going to be a top player in this league in a couple of years. Aiden Young was part of the Saginaw deal that saw Owen Beck go to Saginaw. And you can go down the list of key players that they picked up. Nico Addy as well from the Owen Sound Attack. So the fans, I think, have enjoyed watching these young guys. They've struggled a little bit, 5-19-4 since the trade deadline. But over the past couple of weeks, they picked up 3 victories. Mm-hmm. And, the fans have been really excited to see the talent that's on this team and what this team could do when you look a couple of years down the road.
And I think the Ontario Hockey League, it's better off when you've got a team like the Peterborough Petes who are competitive. And right now they're in that cycle where you've got the young talent. They're looking down 2-3 years down the road and looking to compete once again for a championship.
Yeah, every team does it a little bit differently. I think you'll remember when we were up in Sudbury, the mindset at that time was to get into the playoffs every year. And some other teams do it differently. You got to admire what the Brantford Bulldogs have done this year. They just won the championship 2 years ago, and they're in contention again this year. So they've done a great job there. Ottawa seems to always be, right among the mix as far as the top teams in the Eastern Conference. North Bay again looks like they're having another run and have a good shot at an Eastern Conference title. So every team does it a little bit differently. And, the Petes decided to go the route that they've gone. And I don't think there's too many people that, can argue that. Obviously, it seemed to be the right decision at the time. We're going to have to wait to see how all these players develop and with the new young talent that comes into the organization. And I'm sure they'll add a couple of older players as well to help mold the young players on the hockey club. But every team does it a little bit differently. And, the Petes found themselves in a very good position to go the route that they decided to go.
And for you personally this season, I noticed you got to interview Chris Pronger earlier. They had Chris Pronger night. You're also calling games close to your hometown. You must be enjoying your time there in Peterborough right now.
Yeah, you know what? It's been a lot of fun. It's a little disappointing that I showed up here when I did because the pandemic hit. And, as I say, 2020 was going to be a great year, I think, for the club. They had a pretty good season and were ready to make a run. Of course, 2021 never happened. Kind of the rebuild in 2022 to get ready for last year. So it's been fun. And you mentioned, yeah, I'm originally from Port Hope, which is about 30 minutes south of Peterborough. So it was a little bit of a homecoming, and it's I'm going to say it's something that I've always wanted to do. I always wanted to be the radio voice of the Peterborough Petes. And this is my 4th season that I'm finishing up, 21st season overall in the Ontario Hockey League. So I've been very lucky, very fortunate. I got to meet some great people along the way, like yourself. We had some good times up in Sudbury on the long road trips we had up there. So it's been a lot of fun. And, I'm not done yet. We'll see what happens down the road. But, it would be nice to get to the Memorial Cup and win one after being there twice and knocked out in the semifinals.
Well, they say third time's the charm, so maybe in a couple of years, eh?
Maybe. You never know. Stranger things have happened.
Well, Stu, thank you very much for doing this. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, and all the best the rest of the way.
All right. Always a pleasure, Mike, and great to see you. And it'll be great to catch up with you and Gene in Barrie.
Says Peterborough Petes play-by-play radio voice Stu Kernan. Always great to catch up with Stu, and it was a lot of fun working with him up in Sudbury. We had those 4 seasons, and the longest playoff run I had with Stu was a second-round appearance in 2013, I believe. That's when the Sudbury Wolves ended up losing 4 straight to the Belleville Bulls, but still, playoff hockey is a ton of fun, and for Stu, he's been able to experience 2 Memorial Cups since his time with the Sudbury Wolves. So it's always great to catch up with play-by-play voices around the Ontario Hockey League. And of course, the Peterborough Petes, they will be at the Saddleton Arena Saturday nights. That's going to be a 7:30 puck drop at the Saddleton Arena. Gene and I will have the call on Rogers TV, and Thomas West, of course, will be on the sidelines. And that also happens to be the final game of the regular season for the Barrie Colts. Playoff hockey just over a week away. As of the time of recording, still waiting to find out who the Colts will play in the first round. I think we'll have a better understanding of the playoff picture come Friday night as the Oshawa Generals. They're going to be in Kitchener to face the Rangers. If Oshawa gets a win, that will pretty much seal it. Then we'll know that it'll be Generals and Colts in the first round. But we won't know for a couple more days yet. But still, it's always good to be preparing for the postseason. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. If you have any thoughts that you want to share, you can put that in the comments section down below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.